how do you sort of assess the current landscape of TV comedy?
Well, I think television comedy is so much better than feature comedy right now. I was watching Veep the other night. I think that show just kills it. I think the shows up here just absolutely kill it. I'm still a huge TV fan, man. I watch constantly, and with 3 kids, I find it incredibly hard to even keep up. You know, I thought Silicon Valley was great this year too. I really enjoyed it. I always feel like there's a new show that you're supposed to watch, and I never feel like I'm cool enough or hip enough to see it until everybody's already seen it, and then I'm like the idiot talking about stuff that you all know about. So.
Well, it's good that we're in an age of TV comedy where you can actually turn the TV on and for a few minutes go, what the hell is this? And I think that there's so many unique voices and so many different outlets for people to do exactly what their vision is, and there's networks that support that vision, that there's a real sort of a wide variety of different approaches to comedy that I don't think anyone's ever seen before. There are literally shows on TV now that you would never be possible ever before this, and it's amazing. Like Rob's show's amazing, Louis' show's amazing, my show has its moments, but there's just so much stuff on that it's just like it's like a dream that the outlets afford us this luxury of having the place to do these shows.
My new pet peeve on that note is people that are in the business that don't actually watch TV. Get out. You know what I mean? Do something else. Just watch. You got to still watch constantly. I can proudly say I've seen, you know, I just plopped on a panel randomly, and I've seen every person show up here religiously, you know, and not because I was studying for a test, because they're all really good. So.
You've noticed that there are hour-long shows that are considered dramas or comedies like Orange is the New Black that have great comedy moments, and then shows like Marc's show or Louis, these shows that are ostensibly comedies but get to emotional truth. And so it's like, what's interesting about this moment in TV is that the lines have kind of blurred between comedy and drama in a way that is confusing to people and kind of exciting.
Well, let's talk a little bit about, I mean, this is called, I guess, a night in the writer's room. Let's talk a little bit about the writer's rooms for each of you and how those have changed. We've seen, you know, these shows with kind of an auteur imprint sprouting up, and these more, you know, ambitious and complicated kind of shows. And what happens with the writer's room when you start introducing those very particular voices? Can anybody write Maron, you know?
No. Well, the process there was that this year we had a couple more writers. Last year was just me and Duncan Birmingham and Sievert Glare and Michael Jamin. There were just 4 of us. And I was very sort of diligent, being that was my first time writing a show, my first time acting in a show, my first time producing a show. I was nervous, and I needed the thing to be as authentic as possible, to the point where my father didn't talk to me for a year. So, but, you know, it was worth it. And no matter how much I told him that, look, I got Judd Hirsch to play you. You know, arguably he's a better father. But that didn't placate him. But we're okay now. But what happened in the second season is still, when we break story, they all have to sort of be rooted in my life, and they have to be authentic to me, or I'm not going to be able to play it. And so the process is really, even with now we have 6 writers and myself, we broke the 13 stories, and then it just becomes, how much can we build out? How much can we fictionalize from events and emotions of my real life? I think it's a fairly unique situation, but with every story and with every script, you know, it really has to ring true to me, and I'm in the room at all times when this happens, where I'm saying, like, I can't say that, or I can't play that, or I can't do that. It's not going to fit me as a person, and that's really the process. And in this season, we were able to create stories without it, you know, alienating my father. We were able to fictionalize a little bit, which gives hope for a 3rd season. Is that, like, no, we have a world that's not hinging directly on my experience. And that was really the process. It's all got to go through me and what I'm capable of doing and being on the screen.
Anyways, Bill, I mean, you've worked on, we've already established you've done a lot of shows. Have the rooms changed at all over time?
They really have. You know, I mean, look, one thing that's continuous is so many different showrunners are modest and hopefully attribute a lot of responsibility to the staff, but every show that everybody's ever liked has one voice that takes the scripts home on weekends and writes them so they sound like they're supposed to sound in their head, whether it's, you know, Shonda or Marc or whoever. I think the one thing that's really changed for me, you know, in the writer's room is the obligation, you know, now that one of the cool reasons, to circle back to the other question, that there's so many different shows is even on networks now, I think niche programming works. You know, I think a show like Community can survive. And quite honestly, I think it'll probably continue to go on if you know, Dan's really passionate about it and wants to try and make a last little chunk happen somewhere. And but it doesn't just happen because of what the writers write in the writers' room. There's this, I feel an obligation now to feed your fan base extra content and to let them into the process, to let them have access to you as a performer, to you as a writer, to cast members, to social media, to Twitter, to feel like they're being rewarded in a landscape with 1,000 channels, that they're being consistently rewarded by giving you their attention. And the amount of time that's actually spent talking about that on my shows is something, you know, it's changed so quickly. When I did Spin City, your entire job in launching a show was to call the network up and make sure you had a bunch of 30-second spots, you know, on the good night. And that was it. As long as you got like a bunch of commercials, because everybody only watched 3.5 networks, your show is going to work. And now you sit in the writer's room, and at the end of the day or in pre-production, you go, okay, who's running the writer's room Twitter account? Who's doing the extra webisode material? You know, who's going to go out and let people come see the set? Which cast member is the most accessible for this age?
You got to be careful. I had fans come to my house. They showed up at my house. And they felt like it was, you know, okay to show up at my house. And this guy just shows up at the house, and the girl I was with at the time answers the door, and she goes, "Can I help you?" He's like, "Yeah, it really is easy to find his address." And it was awkward because I didn't know what to do, because this is somebody who loves the show. He didn't seem dangerous at the moment.
First, you find out if he's a Nielsen family or not.
Well, you're right. Well, you know, it's like, do you have? And then I saw. He had a couple of friends with him, these two women, and I walk out, I'm like, you know, this isn't cool, man. You know, you can't just drive up to someone's house because you feel like doing it.
Mark,
and then,
I've already said I'm sorry.
I don't forgive you yet. I mean, it was nice to meet you, but it was awkward.
It's a fine line, though, but you don't you love it on some
Well, that was the
level,
thing, is
right?
like my girlfriend, like, she was furious that they came, and I'm like, you know, you freaked her out. This is weird. It's not right. And then I gave it a beat, and I'm like, but you want to see the garage? I'll show you the garage. And so I let him see the garage, and I'm like, but not cool. Now get out of here. And don't tweet that picture for an hour, so I got to explain it to her.
Scrubs, for some reason, was very big in Germany, and German tourists used to come by, and we never had enough money for all the extras in the hospital, so we just put Scrubs on them and let them, you know, roam around. Just don't,
You want to be on the show.
yeah, just don't stare into the camera. You're going to be fine.
Oh, that's great.
But by the way, I guess to bring it back over to Rob, too, I think that the ability now to even, you know, now that ratings in the ones are making shows survive, by the way, it's not a bad thing, okay? Networks can do whatever. As long as content is king, it's fine for everybody in the creative community and everybody that works with the creative community. But it means that grassroots efforts and something, I mean, I remember when Sunny came out, nobody could believe that had happened or that it actually worked, and now I think it's almost a model for some people. Do you know what I mean? When you went into it, were you feel like you had to write and launch your own show?
No,
You're welcome, Brian. I'll take it from here.
No, it's good. Yeah. The less I have to do, the better. So go to town.
No, I mean, I think everything you're saying makes a lot of sense. At the time, I was waiting tables, and I guess in my own ignorance, I thought, well, if I just go in there and I show them what I can do, that maybe they'll give me a shot at making my show. And sure enough, they did. And within a few weeks of it sort of happening, everybody kept coming up to me, including my friends and agents and managers, and saying, like, this doesn't happen. It just doesn't happen. And the truth is, it didn't happen prior to that, because there was no. I mean, prior to that time period, because there weren't so many outlets. There was so much money. It wasn't so niche, and you couldn't give waiters opportunities to be the showrunners of their own shows. And now it's opened up because there's so many different outlets. It's opened up so many different opportunities.
I just wanted to ask, because before I forget, Bill, if that's okay with you. Sure. Okay. You do, Rob, you do your show in kind of an interesting way, or you did, and I assume you still do, where you write blocks of episodes and then go shoot like several episodes.
That's right. Because it's a cost saving measure, but also because we all act on the shows and because I act on the show, we attempt to write all the episodes before we start shooting. And then once we've done that or come close to it, we'll then block shoot. So right now, we're only doing 10 episodes a season, which is great. So we'll block shoot five episodes at a time. The most we've ever done is 7 episodes at a time. And for a show like ours, it's very conducive to shooting like that because the characters never learn anything. They never they never grow or change.
Bravo.
Yeah, it's you're sort of starting over at each episode, and because we write the shows, we have an intimate knowledge of it, and really it's more of a pain in the ass for continuity for the costume department and the script coordinators, things like that. I mean, but for us, it's actually fairly easy and insanely cost effective.
Matthew, I mean, Matt, excuse me. You did 22 last season. I think everyone else did, probably the most anyone else did was 13. When you're working with that kind of volume, it must be a much different.
Well, it's actually interesting. When we started the mini project, we're actually in a similar position to Rob and the guys are at Always Sunny. I actually talked to them about how they did it because, Mindy is the creative voice and the storyteller of our show, but she has to act 12 hours a day sometimes. And so, especially in a network schedule, which is 22 episodes is an inhuman amount of content. And so really the job becomes, to your earlier question, of how to balance the writer's room with the sort of the auteur. In our case, Mindy's the auteur, and the rest of us have to just kind of get to the point where we're like in a mind meld position with her, where, I basically have learned to think like an Indian American OBGYN, which has been incredibly valuable to me in my life. I can deliver a baby. But yeah, you get to the point where someone has to be on camera, and the rest of us have to kind of like make up the work, just so that you have a functional product. And we're always jealous of the cable model, with the limited seasons, and you're able to do one thing at a time. But the demands of the network are that everything has to be going on at once, and so it's interesting.
Can I go back to did you want to jump in, Marc?
No, it's just like we do sort of the same thing. Like the need to get the scripts done before you start shooting. So if I'm in every scene, it's hard to do rewrites because you don't have the time. If we're doing an episode every 3 days. We usually do 2 at a time, and that was the most important thing to me when we started the season. Was like we have to have all of these done before we start shooting, or it's going to be a real pain, and you have to do it that way.
I just wanted to go back. You talked a little bit about crazy fans showing up at your doorstep, but that's sort of an extreme example of what seems to happen with these shows which have smaller niche but insanely loyal fan bases that feel an enormous sense of ownership of the show. And to what extent you can listen to those voices and to what extent you have to sort of ignore them because they may not be representative of the larger audience that's watching it.
It's a slippery slope, Look, everybody up here that's a comedian or a writer or anybody that's a performer, 1,000 compliments are erased by one, you suck. And I go on Twitter now and I'm Teflon, but usually when I'm typing, I don't care what you say, I'm Teflon. There's like tear streaks. Down my cheeks. But look, we kept Scrubs on for like 23 years because of a small, passionate fan base that would not only follow us from time slot to time slot, but network to network even, And I think that your obligation is you can't get caught up in listening to everybody like, I don't want this person to like that person, or I don't want this person to lose that job. But you find yourself in the world like Community was in. I just use it as an example because it's the closest one. When Dan wasn't there for a year, you could sense a little bit of a rebellion from their fan base and the danger of the show going away. And so I think that you have to consider them like a mass that you have to keep them generally pleased because is a business, and they're the ones that are fighting for you, you know. And so we really felt an obligation to it on Scrubs. We lost our way one year, and we really, back then it wasn't as active, but the site TV Without Pity was really kind of, you could go on, and we ended up doing an episode that we called out some of the people by name, yeah, for everybody that says, hey, you suck shit, there's somebody that has an insightful thing about it. It seems they got tired of writing rants for John McGinley, even though I used to just turn on, even to watch it in a bad episode, it would get me through it. And that's the type of thing that you had to hear, for me anyways, as a showrunner, you know, and be responsible to it.
I have to bridge this weird gap where the people who listen to my podcast, so that's 300 to 400,000 people per episode, know me intimately, because that's the type of show that is. So they come at the TV show knowing a lot of the true stories that some of these narratives are built on. So I have to surprise them, you know, make them enjoy the fictional me as much as they know me deeply through the podcast, and kind of, you know, bridge this gap, because a lot of people come to the TV show not knowing about the podcast. So being in two different formats that are very different is sort of interesting, to accommodate the fans that know me real well versus the people that don't know me at all is a little tricky. And in the first season of Maron, episode 1, I dealt with an internet troll who, you know, that was what the whole story was based on, and that really happened, is the one guy you're talking about who, you know, says, you know, you suck. But I ended up having a year-long exchange with this idiot. So that's how insecure I can be. Like, you know, I couldn't understand why he didn't like me, and I ended up tracking him down on Facebook and then messaging him and telling him, like, if you're going to paraphrase my joke, do the whole joke. I think you're judging me wrong. I mean, that went on for a year until the guy was finally like, look, man, I was going through a weird thing. So, Foley, he didn't play him, Nielsen. Yeah. But you know, I tried to deal with that on the show in the fictionalized version, and it worked. And the guy on the show, his name was Dragon Master, but it took like 12 minutes for someone to create the Twitter handle Dragon Master and start shitting on me in the real Twitter. So fiction kind of begets this reality frame. But it's weird with the access and the sort of the difference in the mediums that I'm working in to sort of balance a product that will appeal to everybody, since I'm so open about who I am.
There's no fictional Marc.
I know, it's sad.
Well, just for the other three of you, do you monitor? I mean, do you go on Twitter after an episode airs, especially if it's you know, an episode you wrote, and start perusing the comments, or do you stay away from that?
Well, for us, I mean, a show in season 2 of the Mindy Project, we're really dealing with Mindy and her love interest Danny as this sort of central moment for the show, and we definitely got the sense by the end of the season that there were a limited number of times we could sort of bring them together, take them apart, bring them together, take them apart, before the audience was just going to revolt, and that's enough. And so without any specific instance of the audience sort of telling us something, you can just sort of take a general temperature of the audience, like what they're really looking forward to, what, when you give it to them, they're going to be most excited for. And so we just sort of use it as more of a mass temperature taking, and say, like, okay, this is where the show should go, while still, you know, keeping the creative ability to just define the details.
It's very hard to remember that when someone shits on you on Twitter, they don't represent the internet. They're just one guy. But when you're sitting there on Twitter and somebody dumps on you, there's this weird moment in your head that's like, oh my God, no one likes me. But no, it's just one idiot going, you're an idiot. And then you base your whole, it's tricky. Maybe I'm telling too much.
We've always thought that it's our responsibility to preserve the tone of the show. That as long as we stay consistent with the tone and continually told stories that we wanted to tell, then that's what the audience would want. And that we had to make sure that each episode felt true to the characters that we've created, but then also continually surprise the audience, which is what we've always been trying to do from day one. So that inherently will incite a lot of dissent amongst your audience members, because they want to be, from our perspective, they want to be they want to be surprised, but at the same time they want to feel like they're still watching the same old Sunny. So personally, I love to hear when somebody says, "Oh, I hated that episode," or "I fucking hate you," or "I hate where you're going," or "Sonny's changed," because to me that means that when they sit back down to watch next week's episode, and they will, because we've been on for 10 years and somebody's watching, that they'll be surprised, so that they don't know exactly what to expect, and that's part of the charm of the show. So we feel like that's a really important thing for us to preserve and hold on to.
Do they ever come back
But in
around
terms of like the, oh yeah,
and say,
yeah,
sorry, dude, my mistake, still good?
No, I mean we never. The truth is, there's a Twitter feed now that is solely people who have Sunny themed tattoos on their body. So my face is tattooed on people's various parts of their body, and there are thousands of people with this. I take that as a sign.
How weird would it be if I pulled my pants down and had tattoos?
That'd be excellent.
I'll show you after the panel, but
It's going to be a rough day when they stop liking you.
Yeah.
Matthew, did you want to weigh in on that?
I don't really. I don't spend much time in the Twitter sphere.
It's okay to admit that. Don't be
Yeah.
afraid to admit that.
I really don't. But I have a business partner who does, and she very nicely, gently, and diplomatically tells me what to do based on her observation of the Twitter fall or whatever she calls it. So I mean, it does influence the show to some degree, but not so much. Not so much. We have a lot of things that we want to talk about, and in the writers' room, and trust that the audience, wants to be. I think it's such a good point, Rob, about kind of in the best possible way frustrating the audience's expectations when it feels right, not just giving them, not just serving up the same, meal every week, but to sort of gently frustrate their expectations and give them something that's challenging.
We've got one person, I think, on this panel who's working in multi-camera sitcoms right now. Everyone else is single camera. Just as kind of students of television and people who grew up on multi-camera sitcoms, which I assume everybody did, what do you see as the future for that genre?
It's really interesting because I agree with everything that these guys are saying because I did Scrubs and Cougar Town. We're both single camera, and I love it. I love the experience. It's been really interesting. The first show I did was a multi-camera show, and it was a gift because it was with Michael J. Fox, and he had crazy timing and knew the medium really well. Doing it now, I just got to flat out admit it. It's comfort food. I love it. Okay, it's the exact opposite of what Matt was talking about. It's give them the same thing every week and try to surprise them with jokes and try to make people laugh with something that they, I think with the prevalence of such deep, multi-layered shows, that there's always going to be a place for a show that you can listen to with one ear while you're eating dinner and hopefully laugh a little bit. The proof, Big Bang Theory reruns are the second highest rated comedy on TV this year. On TBS.
And the live audience makes a big difference too. You're playing for a live audience.
By the way, I hadn't written jokes like this in a long time. I really enjoy it. As for the future, Brian, I think that the one place that network television, CBS has proven it. I think the other networks will. I hope McElhenney works on Fox. I think he's a really funny young comic. I think networks can compete in multi-camera comedy and still make a big old throwback sitcom. I think when they do a single-camera comedy, they have to have somebody like, on the network anyways, they have to have somebody that's captured the zeitgeist like Mindy, to even kind of have a chance to compete with the storytelling that people are allowed to do and show on cable and the other outlets. So I'm not surprised at all when every year CBS's multi-camera comedies just dominate.
I always think it's weird that people think, single cam's cool, multicam can never be cool. When you think of Colbert, live audience, Jon Stewart, live audience, there's an immediacy there. I think there's tricks that people aren't even playing with to make the sort of dynamic between people on stage and a live audience feel immediate, political, cool. I think it's a genre with a future that hasn't really been tapped into yet.
If you were giving advice to someone breaking into the business right now, what would you tell them? And given your druthers, is this a better time to come into the business than when you got into it, or is it worse?
I would say without a doubt, shoot something.
Absolutely.
Without a doubt. Without a doubt. Because the one thing you can't pitch or get anybody to truly understand when reading a script is tone. And that's the single most important, from my perspective, the single most important aspect of storytelling in our particular medium. Getting people to understand the kind of show that you want to make. And right now, we have the technology in our pockets to shoot a television show way better than the pilot that we shot 10 years ago for Sunny. That was the sales tool by which we sold our show. And the only thing that sold that show about a guy lying to his friends about having cancer to impress the woman that he was stalking as a comedy was that we went out and shot it first so that I didn't have to explain that and have everybody go, what? How is that funny? We just popped in the DVD and there it was. I think that's the single most important thing to do right now.
The opportunities, my script coordinator, I think he's about to be a YouTube sensation. He's making these short films that are brilliant. My goddaughter's 24, is a stand-up, and she has a number of projects that she's working on. One of them is this Lark Who's There, which is basically pranking people on Tinder, which is, a blog, but it's so funny and so filthy and so voicey that she's gonna, there's so many ways to enter the world that we're all part of now. I really feel like it's become a genuine meritocracy, as opposed to, you get the old ways of getting in and having a connection and getting a job as a writer's assistant or whatever. There are still those paths, but there's just everything now. You can put something up, and 1 million people can watch it. I mean, it's amazing. So I agree with that.
It's a good sign that everybody's saying the same thing. I've been doing this for so long. When I first hired a writing staff, everybody gives you their spec mad about you, and and their other spec, and that's how you hired them. So it doesn't just have to be creating your own vision. If we're giving advice to young people, especially talking about the writer's room, your ability as a young person to shoot sketches, to give a little visual representation. I hired a person. Is a true story. I hired a person on a show, a staff writer, who I got his script, and then I also got a DVD that said writing sample. And I put the DVD in my DVD player, and it was silent. It was just him and his computer typing for 5 minutes. Immediately hired the guy, right?
Had to.
Yeah, you got it. I mean, you don't really have any other options. The second thing I would say, if it's really in the writer's room, the thing that still bums me out is every TV show is staffed with assistants, PAs, writers' assistants agents' assistants that want to be writers. 9 out of 10 of the young writers I meet still haven't written anything. And the amazing thing to me is if you're here and you're saying that you're a writer, I know it sucks, and I know it's like pulling teeth, and I know, by the way, anybody that says that writing is fun, you're a liar. Having written something is fun. Writing is horrible. If you're lucky enough to talk to any of these gentlemen or any of the many women that work and run shows out there too, and you're going to say you're a writer, you got to have a giant stack of things that you've written in your car, or you're just wasting your time.
Every one of our shows is written collaboratively to some extent, and I feel like a lot of people when they're starting out, they're by themselves in their bedroom working on their own thing, and find a group of people that you agree with, that you feel like you have a comedy sensibility with, bounce stuff off them, make stuff together. I feel like the rest of your career in good luck is going to be working with other people, making something together. Nobody makes something by themselves, and so start that from the beginning. Just find people to hone your craft against, and you'll do that for the rest of your life.